Haku Haku relatives, thank you for joining me. I am excited to finally share through audio and visual this book, Sisterhood, that I have written, and I have a lot of love and pride that has been put into this. So we're just gonna read thoroughly one chapter at a time and post them on Wednesdays, and so welcome to the first session. So I will read the cover, the foreword, and the first chapter for this beginning part. And there will probably be no edits, so if there's any mistakes, here we go. Growing up in the hood has many challenges. Some people get lost in the westernized brainwash and conditioning, others in the pain and trauma endured for generations. In Jessa Calderon's SisterHOOD, a group of young girls from the hood stand with each other and love each other through it all. They encourage one another to keep going. Together they cry, learn, heal, grow, mentally and spiritually. And here we go, let's get to the foreword. This book is a mix of fiction and nonfiction. Although U.S. history will have you believe that nothing was worth noting on this continent prior to European, Spanish, French, American, English invasion, there was a rich culture amongst native nations, people of high intelligence. They were doctors, healers, botanists, astronomers, astrologers, good cooks, artisans, hunters, gatherers, story keepers and tellers, artists, singers, dancers, grandmothers, grandfathers, parents, children, leaders, and so much more. Science continues to come out with facts that back up what our families have been saying about our truths for generations, proving the history books wrong. The sad fact is that almost no one listens to Native people until science and archaeology state it as facts. By then, the damage is already done. Although this is a mostly fictional book, I am sharing truths of some Native histories and even truths of the tragic modern events that take place with some of these characters. There is much more rich history in our cultures that I did not fit into this book. As a young woman growing up in the Los Angeles Unified School District, I have seen firsthand how our stories were being sugar-coated and fictionalized, from stories such as the California missions, all natives supposedly crossing the Bering Strait, to our mysterious disappearance in the 1800s. It is time for us to hold institutions and school districts such as LAUSD accountable for working with Indigenous voices of each nation that they are discussing and or should be discussing. Our children shouldn't have to feel ashamed, embarrassed, or invisible in their homelands. That is unacceptable. My hope in writing this book is that those who read it will have a better understanding that we still exist and we are everyday people too, that our youth will be proud to be themselves and not hide their identities any longer, that education and political entities have natives at the table with a voice that is finally heard, that people ancestrally connected to Central and South America can be proud to be Indigenous as well, that those who claim Chicano can be proud of their Native heritage without forcing erasure stories on other natives with their fabricated story of Aslan. There's an older belief/story of Aslan that does not create erasure to other nations. That we can each take away healing points and move forward knowing that we are all worthy of health, peace at mind and heart, love and success, no matter how hard of a life we've had. If possible, get some land back for those of us non-federally recognized nations as well as federally recognized nations. And most importantly, that we can work together and heal the earth for the sake of the next generations. Can I get a narrator intro? What up though? My name is Robert. My homies used to call me Pleito because I was always getting into fights and shit. As much trouble as I liked to get into, I also enjoyed learning and school. I secretly enjoyed writing essays and short stories in English class. I was a well-known gang member in the apartments where I grew up. Honestly, the apartment complex that I was raised in, man, it ain't no motherfucking joke. Making it out of the hood alive isn't in the cards for some of us. A grip of the homies will make it out in handcuffs. A few of the homies and residents will find decent jobs to get them by. As for myself, I didn't make it out the hood alive. I was gunned down by two of my bitch-ass enemigas July 16, 1993. July is when the streets start to get really hot in more ways than one. Know what I mean? I was active as fuck, too. So it was just a matter of tiempo before that shit caught up with me. I left my mom and baby sister Susie behind. I felt gacho in my last seconds of life because I thought I should have been the one to step up and take care of my jefita and hermanita. Instead, I was chilling in the calles and running amok. But from where I stand now, I can see that everything is happening as it should. I can't do too much for them from here, but I do keep an eye on my familia. When I died in 93, I was 3 months away from turning 17. I would have graduated high school. In 1994, had I not been gunned down, and I mean it, I would have graduated. Unlike most of my homies who were too cool for school and dropped out. Enough about me though. I'm gonna share a few stories with you about some events and experiences that went down with a few of the homies from the apartments where I grew up. The stories that I share today mostly take place after my death and revolve around a clica of homegirls who lived in the complex. Why do I want to tell you about this group of females, you ask? Because these girls are what are known as a product of the barrio. Despite the odds against them, these ladies made it out the hood with much success. One of these girls is my baby sister Susie, and I'm proud as fuck of her, eh? When I speak to you about my baby sister and jefita, I'm gonna try to talk about them as a narrator instead of a relative, so there's no confusion. Right now, as I sit here and tell you their stories, these girls are between the ages of 16 and 18. I'm gonna share pieces of these girls' life stories from youth to the very end because, well, I know what happened. I've seen it in the Hall of Records. Do yourself a favor, grab a seat, because this shit's about to get real. Chapter 1, Drifting. The sun was beginning to rise. Lori sat up from the slab of concrete where she was sleeping. She walked to a hidden area in the apartments, pulled out a water bottle, toothpaste and toothbrush from her duffel bag, and began to wash her face and brush her teeth. Lori wet her hair, then put the container, toothpaste, and toothbrush back in her bag. She pulled out a comb. Lori combed her hair as she walked over to Gabby's apartment to wait for her to come out and kick it. Lori had recently found herself in an unstable situation in her life. A week prior, Lori's brother Andre had broken the lock on her room door and stole her old cell phone, a camera, and a boombox radio. When confronted by Lori, he denied that he did it. Andre had mass addictions to alcohol, weed, and cocaine. Lori told her parents about her missing things. Lori's dad, Ray, argued with his son and kicked him out of their home. However, that appeared useless as Andre found himself sleeping in his car, sneaking into the apartment to shower and steal things while his parents were away at work. Only 3 days had passed that Ray kicked Andre out when Lori's mom, Tony, walked up to his car and told him to come back inside. Lori was upset and began to argue with her mother about how she was enabling his bad habits. Tony told Lori, "If I want my babies to live at home with me, then I'll have my babies live at home with me. If you don't like it, you can leave." Lori felt so rejected with that statement that she went to her room, packed a duffel bag of clothes and necessities, then left. Lori hung out with the youngsters until 2 or 3 in the morning. After the last youngster called it a night, She slept outside around the apartment with her head on her duffel bag for a couple of nights. One night, she was hanging out with the guys from the hood when one of the OGs spotted a man who had been walking around the apartments acting like a tough guy towards the kids. The OG, who went by the name of Stroller, walked up to the tough guy and banged on him. The guy said he didn't want any problems. Stroller said with an aggressive voice, "Know where the fuck you're at, ese? You're in my hood. Let me catch you walking in my hood again, it's on sight." The guy nodded and sped off. About 15 minutes passed, and the tough guy went walking down another path behind Lori. In disbelief, Stroller said, "Motherfucker! Come on, little homies." Stroller and two of the young homies ran up to the guy. Stroller socked the guy in the face. Before the guy could hit the floor, Stroller grabbed him by the collar. Stroller grabbed his gun out from his waistband and pistol whipped the guy 3 times. Although Lori heard everything, she never once turned around to witness. She sat there gripping onto her bag with her eyes closed and her teeth clenched. Stroller walked back to Lori and said, "Come on, little mama, let's bounce." With nowhere else to be, Lori threw her duffel bag over her shoulder and left with the guys. They jumped into Stroller's car and headed to one of the big homies' cantons. This big homie was known as Big Creeps. The guys and Lori all got out of the car and went back to the house to kick it. Creeps had been on one. Cocaine was his drug of choice. When they walked in, Creeps' son was tired and acting up. Creeps had told his son to lie down, but the kid was antsy because people were there. Creeps started shouting and went to hit his son. He slapped his son in the face. Lori was scared for the kid because Creeps was a big vato. Lori remembered a trick Gabby taught her about instantly calming someone by squeezing the back of their neck and sending them love. Lori attempted it on Creeps, hoping it would work. Creeps melted in Lori's hands, instantly relaxing. He then apologized and talked calmly to his son, who was quietly sobbing. Soon, his son lay down to sleep. After a while of chilling and drinking at Big Creep's pad, Lori had to go pee. The bathroom didn't have a door. So Stroller told all of the homies to put their backs to the bathroom. He said, "If anyone peeks at her, you're getting a putazo." All the guys turned their backs while Lori, feeling very uncomfortable, tried to go pee. She shouted out, "Man, you guys are making me nervous. Can someone start whistling or something?" The guys started whistling a little too. As Lori began to pee, she said, "Oh, that's better." After an hour more of chilling at Big Creep's pad, Stroller received a phone call. He told Big Creeps they were going to shake the spot. The guy on the other end of the phone called to tell Stroller to come through to check out some straps. By the time they reached the guy's house, not too far from the apartments, Lori had grown tired. Also, the thought of being around drunken guys with guns didn't sit right in her head. She told the guys that she was going to walk home. The guys told her to be careful. Lori walked a little bit further up the street and lay on the sidewalk. Gripping her duffel bag, Lori fell asleep. About 30 minutes after lying down to fall asleep, Lori was awakened by a foot to the side of her ribcage. She glanced up to see a man's image standing over her. It was Stroller. Angrily, he asked, "The fuck you doing laid out like this?" Lori said nothing. Stroller sighed and picked Lori off the ground, saying, "Come on, I ain't leaving you out here." Lori got in the back seat of Stroller's car. Stroller turned to the youngster sitting in the back seat named Little Blue, asking him, "You know where I found her?" Little Blue had his eyes squinted at Lori as he asked, "Where?" Stroller explained that he went to take a leak up the street and spotted her sleeping on the floor. To Lori, Little Blue asked, "What the fuck's wrong with you, man? Why you didn't go home like you said you were?" Lori looked down at her feet as she replied, I've been sleeping on the Gaias for a few days now. Stroller said, Nah, that's bullshit, mija. You can sleep in my car. I'll leave it open for now on. Lori's eyes watered up as she said, Thanks, big homie, but I don't want to bother nobody. That's why I didn't say shit. Little Blue snapped his lips and told Lori, Come on, man. You know you can stay with me anytime, sis. Lori nodded her head, still looking at her feet. Stroller said, Go ahead and sleep in here for now, little mama. You're safe here. Lori said nothing more. She leaned against the door and fell asleep. Around 2:30 in the morning, Little Blue woke Lori up saying, Come on, let's go home. Lori silently got out of the car and followed Little Blue into his pad. When they got to his room, he said, Go on and sleep on the bed, man. I'll sleep on the floor. As she went to lie down, Lori quietly said, Thank you, brother. The next morning, Little Blue woke Lori up with an egg sandwich on a paper plate. She sat up and took the plate. Lori sat with her feet up on the bed and her knees bent, holding the plate with one hand and taking bites of her sandwich with the other. Little Blue asked, So you gonna break it down for me or what? Lori rolled her eyes and told Little Blue precisely what led to her sleeping outside like that. Lori said, I'm thinking of staying with my tia so I can finish out the last semester of school here, but at the same time, I don't want to start no shit between her and my mom. Little Blue said, Nah, man. Just tell her that you can't stand living with Andre. She'll take you in. Lori nodded. She said, Yeah, that could work. I'll hit her up later today. Hey, thanks for letting me crash here. Lori lifted the sandwich as she continued. And for the sandwich? Little Blue replied, Simone, you can take a shower. When you're ready, we'll go smoke a bleezy. Lori agreed. A real shower sounded terrific to her right about now. Little Blue handed her a towel and waited for her in the living room. Lori met Little Blue in the living room when she was ready. He smirked and said, You could leave your duffel bag in the room, man. Ain't no one gonna jack you here. Lori looked down at her bag and let out a single soft laugh. She walked to his room and placed the bag by his door. Lori and Little Blue stepped out to the staircase to blow some smoke. They were on winter break, so they had nothing but time to kill. Lori said, Now that I'm washed up and looking decent, I think I want to go apply for jobs. Little Blue asked, You want to go walk around the shopping center and apply? Lori said, Yee, I'm down with that. Little Blue went inside to grab some pens. Together they walked around, filling out and turning in applications. On the way back to the apartments, Little Blue asked, Don't you think it would be dope to work at Six Flags? Lori thought about it for a second, then replied, Maybe. Like, if you're working the rides, but showing people their pics or anything else probably be weak as fuck. Little Blue agreed and said, That's what I was thinking. I'd be macking it to the morenitas every day as I check their butts. Belt buckles. Lori lightly shoved Little Blue as she laughed out. You's a fool. Just as they were walking to the staircase of Little Blue's pad, Lori received a phone call. After she hung up the phone, she explained it was the guy from the jewelry section at Stan's Clothing. He asked me to go in at 4 p.m. today. Little Blue excitedly said, Fuck yeah, I knew you would land something. Come 3:45 p.m., Lori started walking over to the jewelry shop. When she got there, the jewelry owner briefly ran over sales and prices. Lori sold 4 items in the first 20 minutes. Then a man walked in speaking Spanish to Lori. Lori responded, I'm sorry, yo no hablo español. The guy turned and walked away. The jewelry owner asked, "You don't speak Spanish?" When Lori said no, the man said, "I only hired you because I thought you spoke Spanish." Lori replied, "Well, you didn't ask me." The man said, "I thought all you Mexicans spoke Spanish." Lori responded, "Well, joke's on you. I'm the Native American that was forced to speak English. Maybe next time don't assume." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. Handing the money to Lori, he said, "You can go home now. I don't need you here." Lori's eyes opened wide. She felt shocked and offended. She said nothing else and walked out of the store. Lori entered the apartments and walked around. When she spotted Little Blue, his jaw dropped. He asked, "What are you doing back so soon?" Lori told the guys what happened. They all laughed. Then Little Blue angrily responded, "That's some racist ass bullshit. If only these fools knew whose stolen lands that they're on, and that both Spanish and English are languages forced on us. All of these settlers should be speaking Native American languages. The ignorance is too real." Lori agreed, then shrugged her shoulders and said, "Well, hey, at least we could buy a dub sack." Lori and Little Blue smirked at each other. Stroller walked up to the guys and said, "What's up?" He was coming home from work. He looked over to Lori and said, "Well, if it isn't La Drifter." Lori shook her head as she rolled her eyes, then said, "Home is where the heart is, homie." Stroller gave a sly smile and nodded. He truly understood that saying. He excused himself to go home, clean up, and grub. Around 7:30 in the evening, as Lori and some of the youngsters just finished smoking a blunt, someone whistled. It was the whistle that signified cops were in the apartment. All the guys scattered like roaches when the lights turned on to avoid the police. Lori ran toward the alley behind the apartments. Once she hit the alley, she began to walk. A man dressed in black told Lori to stop. Lori turned to look at the man and continued walking. The man ran up to Lori and grabbed her right arm. Lori wiggled her arm away and shouted, "Get away from me." The man grabbed her arm again, this time with a harder grip, and grabbed her left arm as well. The man cuffed her and asked, "Why would you walk away from a police officer when he asks you to stop?" Lori responded, "How do I know you're a cop and not some weirdo rapist? You're not even wearing a uniform. Plus, you didn't show me your badge." The man asked, "Why should that matter?" Lori asked him, "If your daughter was walking alone and a strange man tells her to stop and grabs at her, what would you expect her to do?" The man grew irritated, exclaiming, "We're talking about you." He began patting her down and reached into her pockets. Lori shook her body and kicked her leg. She asked the officer, "Shouldn't you call a female officer over to reach into my pockets like that, perv?" The man replied, "Hey, watch your mouth." Just then, two male officers walked up. One cop had Little Blue and the other officer had Grims. The police lined the guys up to the right of Lori. The guy who had his hands on Lori's cuffs asked Lori, "Do you know these guys?" Lori looked over to her right, sounding disgusted. She said, "Ew, hell no, I don't know them." She glanced at the cop holding Little Blue's wrists, asking him, "Do you know this guy behind me?" The officer said nothing. Lori continued, "Because he came at me all crazy, claiming to be a cop, but didn't flash a badge or nothing. And he patted me down like a female cop, digging into my pockets and such." The cop that Lori was talking to wouldn't even look at her. Lori then asked the policeman behind her, "Are you done harassing me or what?" The cop asked, "Do you live here?" Lori said yes. Then the undercover asked Lori where she was previous to their encounter. Now sounding annoyed, Lori sighed, then answered, "Man, I'm coming from my girlfriend's house. Look, you dug in my pockets and found nothing. You haven't given me a reason as to why I'm in handcuffs. Am I under arrest?" The cop replied, "No, you're not under arrest. I'm gonna let you go. But next time, when we tell you to stop, you need to stop." Lori replied, "The next time you tell a young woman in a dark alley to stop while undercover, Flash your badge, otherwise you're just a creep for all they know. The cop took the cuffs off and let Lori go. Lori turned and slowly walked away. The other officers patted down the guys and found a small sack of weed on Little Blue. They questioned the guys for a little bit. Grims and Little Blue talked respectfully, knowing that they would go to jail or get beat down, or both, by talking the way Lori had. The cops took the sack of weed and let the guys go. Lori met Little Blue at his pad. They went to his room and talked. After about an hour of talking with Little Blue, Lori said, I guess I should get to my tia's house before it gets too late. Little Blue asked, did you ever call her? Lori admitted that she didn't call her aunt because she didn't have the number. As Lori grabbed for her duffel bag, Little Blue said, well, if for whatever reason she isn't home or you can't stay there, bring your ass back here. Lori agreed. She gave Little Blue a hug and a kiss on the cheek as she wished him a good night. Lori walked for about 30 minutes until she got to her aunt's house in Arleta. Arleta was one city over, just southwest of Pacoima. When Lori arrived, her Aunt Jenny was sitting with her two sons watching a movie. Jenny opened the door and welcomed Lori in. Lori and Jenny sat at the kitchen table and talked. Lori explained that she needed space from her brother. Jenny told her niece that it was okay for her to stay as long as necessary, so long as she helped out around the house and with the boys. Lori agreed. Lori spent the next few mornings looking for a job. She would spend her afternoons at the apartments. She tried to be at her aunt's house by the early evening. Within a few days, Lori began working at an Asian cuisine restaurant in Arleta. Her shift would be Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., just until school started back up. Then, they would consider adjusting her hours. Her job paid her under the table. Although Lori loved walking to work, she bought a used beach cruiser bicycle off her aunt's neighbor for $60. When Lori rode her bike to the apartments for the first time, she spotted her friends Susie, Slick, and Isela. Her homie Slick was the first to say, what you got on my 40, fool? What's up, fucking Debo? Lori laughed and said, better knock it off before you get your chain ganged and knocked the fuck out like Red, fool. Susie laughed. Then she told Lori, hey, but low-key, your bike do got a little Debo squeak going on for real, Mom. Lori laughed and said, I know, huh? I need some WD-40 or something. I'll be fixing this bike up little by little. More importantly, though, I want to save for a car. Susie asked, what are you thinking of getting? Lori responded, shoot, I don't even care. I'm down to get a little used Honda like Abby, but I don't know how soon that would even happen unless my job was for sure willing to keep me when school starts up. Then again, it's better for my body and the environment if I fix up and ride this bike around. Isela agreed. Yeah, that's true. Maybe at least ride it around until you start college. Lori said, or something. Well, I'll be back. I'm gonna go see what's up with Little Blue. Slick hissed as he tightened his jaw and pulled his lips back, exposing his teeth. Lori squinted at him as she asked seriously, what, Slick? Slick said, the cops took him in this morning. They said he matched the description of a shooter and they found a strap on him. Lori tossed her head back and looked up to the sky. She looked back at Slick, who had a stern look on his face, ensuring that he wasn't joking. She let out a big exhale as she said, fuck. Isela, trying to ease Lori's mind, said, we don't know if he was the shooter or if his gun matches the one used in the shooting. Until they determine that, they only have him for a strap. With her lips pressed together, Lori nodded her head. Lori excused herself and rode her bike to Little Blue's pad. She sat at the stairs outside his door. She prayed hard for Little Blue. 20 minutes passed. Lori stood up and rode back to her aunt's house. On the days she worked, Lori would come home to make dinner. She spent most of her days off from work at the apartments unless her aunt needed a babysitter. Lori kept tabs on Little Blue's court results. She found out that the gun and bullets did match the gun and ammo in question. The judge charged Little Blue with assault with a deadly weapon. Lori would keep in touch with Little Blue through letters. Aside from missing him, she began to find satisfaction in her daily life. Thank you for tuning in. Catch you on the next one.